This assignment that we're going to be doing, basically we're starting our character off on this side of the field over here. Our character is going to anticipate down, jump up in the air, come back down over here, and recover forward and up and down. Right? So, path of action, essentially, if we're going to break this down into a very simplified form, if we've got this circle as the hips of the character, we're going to anticipate back and down this way, but we're going to add in something extra to this one. We're not just going to do a single anticipation, we're going to build the energy on this. So we're going to have one where we go back, then we're going to come forward and up again, and then we're going to go back even bigger. Okay, so we're going to have two anticipations, and it's going to build in energy. So we're going to come to this point here, and then we're going to swing forward, go up in the air, come down, hit our landing point, come back up again, then down, up, down. Right? So that's essentially the overall path of action and planning out. If this was like the descending energy ball bounce, this is just a modified descending energy ball bounce. Okay, we're changing our path of action here. So we start off with this drawing right here. This will be our key A. We're going to go back to our key B back here, but don't forget that there's secondary keys that go in there as well, where not everything stops at the same time. So we still follow and adhere to that same principle. So we can have our butt stop at B, but our chest is coming down on, let's say, B1. And then the arms go up on B2. Or if you want to call it ABC. You know, if you're going to do them in sequence and do your secondary keys at the same time, then that would be ABC. If we're just going to stick with the broad keys, which you can do this as well, it depends on how you want to, break down your drawings. Approach it either way. It's totally up to you. And this is why it's so flexible, is because you can allow yourself to do that. So we've got our start position, we go back to our broad, let's say we're just doing broad main keys, we're going to go back to B here, then we're going to come back up here to something similar to A but not the same, which will be C. Then we're going to go back even farther up to D. Then we're going to swing forward and up, reach our high point at E. Then we're going to hit down to our low point, F, go up to the high point, G, down to the low point, H, up to a high point, I, and finally settle at J. All right, those will be all our main primary keys. And as I said before, at any point in time, you can add in secondary keys or breakdowns into this. And because we're not doing any numbering system on this at this point, we're just using the ABC system, you can go in, whoops, just took off on me. Hope it's not broken. So at any point in time, like I said before, you can go back in and you can add in secondary keys. So in here, we could have a B1, B2, then come back up to C, go back up here to D, have a D1 and a D2, and then we could do a breakdown in here that could be both a low point, okay, which would be D3. Actually, that would be C, sorry, C, going back from here, we're going from C. So it would be C1, C2, sorry, into D, and then coming forward we go down to the low point here, which would be D1, and then we can do our halfway breakdown point, which is that stretching thrusting position, which would be D2, and then up into E, which is our high point, then do our breakdown over here, which would be E1, down, hit our low point here, then we could do our overlapping action where both in our down point we then begin to bring the hips up maybe to a halfway breakdown point here, which is where the arms would go forward and the head would go forward into that snap over position, which would be F1. Then up into G, then we could probably have a G1 breakdown where it's overlapping coming back, and then an H1 and an I1. And J would be our final key. Right? So with primary and secondary keys, as well as our main breakdown drawings, we now have all these drawings overall here, which ends up being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So overall you should have roughly around 21 keys. Okay. If you follow the basic dynamics of what I've suggested here. May have more, may have less, depending on what type of action you decide to do. Okay, so if you decide to put in an extra bounce up and down here, then obviously you're going to have 2 more keys, which make it 23. Right? So I'll let you decide how you're going to block that out. Let me just touch on the timing issue here, because once we block this out, and again, this is just your planning stage, the next stage would be to actually go out and start to do some jumping, do some broad jumps, and feel the dynamics of how your body moves. Get someone else to do it for you and watch how they do it. What I want to recommend that you don't do is don't go onto YouTube and Google parkour or whatever that jumping thing is where you're jumping between buildings or pylons or stuff like that. Don't Google that and look at those for reference, okay? Because the dynamics of that are different from what you're doing here, right? It's a different style of jumping, and it has a different physics to it, right? Where you're trying to minimize the amount of impact on it, so you know their cushioning points will not be the same as your cushioning points. Okay, their anticipation will be slightly different. The actual paths of actions will be different as well, right? In a lot of cases, they're jumping down, and they're not doing a full recovery. They're doing the roll type thing, or they bounce and go up to the next thing and hit it. So it's different, right? You can look at it for fun and get a sense of what's going on, but do not rely on it from a point of the way it's actually happening. So you actually have to physically act this out yourself, right? So once we've done this stage here, we've planned it out on paper and blocked it out, and we start to visualize it and understand what it is by acting it out, seeing someone else do it, maybe doing some thumbnail sketches of it, or actually sitting with your disc and actually drawing the key positions out for yourself. Then what you need to do is you need to pencil test it, right? And I'm starting to stress that more and more, because now we're into the stage, fully into the stage now, where we are no longer doing cycles. From this point on, there are no more cycles. Everything starts at one point, anticipates in one direction, and if you want to break this down into its simplest form, here's essentially what we're doing. We're starting here. We're going to anticipate in the opposite direction that we want to go to. We're going to go across in our path of action across to here, hit our key point, come back, and recover with a cushion, okay, or a bounce of some sort. That's essentially what we're doing here. So we're not ending up in the same position here. We're ending up someplace completely different. And all of our assignments are going to be doing that from now on. Okay? So timing is the next issue that you now have to figure out. And a lot of people overcomplicate it, and they think in their brain that once you do all this stuff here, you now have to assign numbers to all these things. And you don't, right? You don't even have to break down timing charts in here. What you do is you pencil test it, and you get a sense of whether or not the action is moving the way you want it to move based on the timing that you're selecting. So you go in, you either plus the number of frames that you're going to put into it to make it go slower, or you take away frames in between to make it go faster. Now, here's another thing that I'm going to let you in on. As you know, as we've been going through each of the classes, we've been progressively adding on things to each class. So we're adding a new principle, we're doing something slightly different here. Things change as we move along, and we're advancing in our understanding of what we're doing. So here's a new little wrinkle that we're going to put into it. As the classes have progressed, what we do is we work on the assignment, you shoot a pencil test, and then you show it to me. Right? In the past, in most cases, all the drawings that you have done have been the ones that I have dictated to you and said, do this, 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 and this. And then you shoot it, and without any sense of timing, you could shoot the whole thing on twos, and essentially it's what would end up happening because you're doing all the drawings for it. Now we're into a stage where we're not doing all the drawings. We're doing main breakdowns and in-betweens, but we still have in-betweens in here. So if this was just the descending energy ball bounce, we'd have our halfway position here, we'd have a quarter, an eighth, and probably a 16th going in there. So we're missing 3 in-betweens here. Right. So at this point now, when I say to you, I want you to shoot a pencil test and have it timed, that's what I mean. I want you to time it out. So if you've got this drawing here and this drawing here and your key position up here, but you're missing these in-betweens, you don't shoot this for 2 frames. Because that doesn't tell me the timing of these missing drawings here. You have to add these drawings in. So you would shoot it for 2 frames, 4, 6, 8, and then you'd shoot E. So for 8 frames, D2 would be on the screen. That gives me the sense of timing that you want to have. Without that, I can't tell what's going on as far as your timing goes. And so here's the twist that I'm going to add in. When you show me your pencil tests, if you don't have it timed, I will not look at it. All right? The same thing is true as if your drawings are incomplete or you haven't finished off your action, I will not look at it. So if you're missing your recovery at the tail end, we're finished. I'll look at your pencil test, and if everything goes from this point here and it gets to here, or even into your impact point, and then all of a sudden there's nothing after that, I turn it off and I say, you're not done. Away you go, because I have nothing to say to you. All right? Especially if it's not timed. If it's timed, it's ripping through. So the example I gave yesterday when we had our guest speaker, remember they were talking about having the animators have to do their Leica reels, or the storyboard artists have to do Leica reels. So that for a television show, they might have 300 scenes. 3 panels per scene. You got basically about 900 to 1,000 panels for a half-hour show. If they shoot that as a pencil test, as a Leica reel, and they expose each of those panels for 2 frames, that thing's just going to rip right through. It's just going to be, and you wouldn't know what was going on. So as a director, you would watch that Leica reel and go, what the heck is that? I can't see what's going on. It's ripping through too fast. I can't tell. What's the timing? It's useless to them. Right? The same thing is true with your animation. If you don't time it properly, it's useless to me. So if you just default to everything is on 2s, not going to look at it. You have to spend the time figuring out what your timing is going to be. So, as I said, that's just a simple matter of just plussing and minusing your frames. So I'm going to show you here an example of what I did with my jump up and down. So I've got my hold here. I'm holding the character in his first position, drawing A, for, this is on 30 frames per second. So I'm holding it for 34 frames to this point. Then I expose drawing A1, which is my first anticipation down where the butt hits, but the body's straight up and down. So then in my timing, as I played around with my timing, I came up with this, where I've got it's exposed for 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I go to A2. A2 is exposed for 1, 2, 3, 4, then I go to B. Here you can see B is exposed for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 frames, and then we go to C. All right? So now by blocking that out and playing around with the timing, I can get a sense as to whether or not that motion is working timed out the way I want it to. And once I've settled on it, which I have since I've written out my exposure sheet here, I can now drop in my actual numbers for each of the drawings. So at the very beginning here, I have drawing A, and it's just held for those 34 frames. So in order to make it look less static, by just having a frozen single drawing, I put in an A1 and an AB, which is a traceback of A1, or number 1, which means that it's a moving hold, or an animated hold is what it's called. Right? The character is just traced back as exactly as I can possibly make it, and because you can't trace back something exactly, you're going to get a little bit of a shimmer to it. So it just doesn't look frozen in space. Right? It's still alive, but it's just not moving. Then my character is going to go into their anticipation on A1, and so what happens is from A to A, or A to A1, I need to anticipate my character down. So what I have here is drawing number 2, 3, 4. So I need one in between in here, going into my key A2, 4. Then I need one in between in here, going to my number 6 drawing, which is B. Right? So each of these drawings here, simply because I've timed it out at this rate, I know exactly, because there's a blank frame right there and a blank frame right here, sorry, that's going to be number 5. So I automatically know what my numbering system is going to be. I simply fill in every other frame with a number, and that tells me what my overall timing is going to be, and it tells me what my next key position is going to be. So C is going to be drawing number 13, which means that going from 6 to 13, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in-betweens that I have to do there. So when I grab my drawings, let me just grab my B. There's my B drawing there, and there's my C drawing there. So this is my extra little anticipation going into the high extreme. So the character is just moving this much here, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in-betweens that I have to put in there. So therefore my timing chart on this one is going to look like this. Drawing A2, or sorry, B is number 6. This is number 6 down here. And I'm going to 13, which is number C. So what's my decision that I have to make here?
Slow in or slow out?
Right. Have to slow in or slow out. So usually you would always have a halfway in between. Okay, remember that was our default. Not absolutely true, but in an instance like this where you've got 6 in-betweens, yeah, you would drop in a halfway in between. That would just be the logical thing to do. So for this action, I want to go from this position here to this position here. I'm going to want to slow into my high point, which is number 13. So that means I'm going to bunch my drawings up over here more. Right? So I might do something like this. So I've got 1, 2, 3. I still need another 3 in-betweens in here. So I could put another one in here to give me 4. And most likely I could put one in here for 5, and probably a little cushion out, just to favor out of it. So if I put it closer to here, it'll make this snap a little bit faster here and then ease into this back position. Right? So therefore my number 7 is my favor, 8 is a quarter, 9 is my breakdown halfway position, 10, 11, and 12. My timing's done. Okay? So it becomes very, very simple from that point. You either slow in or you slow out of an action. So if you're going to go abruptly from this type of coming back high or low like this, and you want to go up high into that position, you would ease into it, but you probably want to go faster at the beginning and then ease into it, and then you would come out of it fairly fast. So you probably have something similar going from 13 into my D position. How many in-betweens do I have there? 1, 2, 3, 4, going from that one to that one. And my next key position here is this one here. This is my strobe drawing, going from this to this. So again, because I want this to be very fast going up here, I'd probably have a halfway in between here, from this one to this one, but then I'd bunch my drawings up down here because I want to accelerate into it. Right? So how many in-betweens did I have there? I had 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I probably put another one over here because I don't want to slow into this action here because it's the halfway point on my way up. This is actually a breakdown. All right? So therefore I would not put a drawing up in here, anywhere in here, to make it slow down at all. I'd be easing into it this way. So it's 14, 15, 16, 17 is my breakdown, and this drawing now is 18. Which I already knew from my exposure sheet. 18, right there. D is 18. All right? So that's how you go through your timing and breaking the whole thing down. Now, of course, that's not the end, okay? Because it does make a difference when you start dropping drawings in and your in-betweens. It can tend to slow things down a little bit. So it's not that I'm locked in any way. I can still go back, do my in-betweens on this, reshoot it as a pencil test, and then make another assessment. And I can decide whether or not that slow in there is just a little bit too slow. And I can just pull a drawing out, or shoot a drawing on ones, or shoot a couple of drawings on ones. All right? I would usually default to, if you find something is moving too slowly and you've got the in-betweens in there, start knocking down the number of frames that you've exposed the drawing for, because the drawing is already done. Why not use it? As opposed to discarding it completely and pulling it out. Better to shoot some stuff on 1s and 2s rather than trying to make it all on 2s. Right? But you have to make that judgment call. Maybe when you do shoot it on 1s, maybe it still looks kind of slow. Right? It's just looking and seeing whether or not you think it feels right and looks right. Okay? So